What's up guys, and welcome back. You guys probably noticed Trent's garage looks a lot different now, but it also is very echoey. Maybe I gotta put up some egg crates or something on the wall to like stop the echo, or pictures, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think we should put on the walls, because now we just have these giant open white walls. I need to put like some posters or some pictures or something. So let me know in the comments what you guys think I should be throwing up on the walls. But for today, I actually got the new bolts for the new studs of our full hydro setup that we were doing in the last video. They were, the bigger ones that we didn't have, that we tapped for. So those have shown up. I think we might actually be able to get the ram mounted, get everything set up on the hydro setup. So we're gonna start tinkering around with that. And if we run into a wall, we're gonna start frame fabrication, because that is the next step. But first, we're gonna try and finish what we started with the front axle. All right, there's my grade 8 bolts that should hopefully go on the ends of the knuckle. This is basically a stud and nut kit with cone washers. Just really hoping these fit in here. And they do. Perfect. Now let's hope that these thread into the knuckle. Only one thing left to do.
Try it.
Test fitter.
Can't find the words to say.
Here goes nothing. Oh my gosh! They don't fit! They're literally the exact same studs and nuts that I had. This is very aggravating. This is what I thought I was ordering. These nuts and studs. Where did those come from? That's what I need to know. This is an Ultimate Dana 60. These studs and nuts and cone washers that come in the Ultimate Dana 60 on the passenger side, I need 3 of them to go on the driver's side. These are not correct, even though this said that they were 5/8. They're not 5/8, those are 5/8. These are like 7/16 or something, or ½ inch. That's very discouraging. We're not gonna let it keep us down. We've got other things that we could be doing. Just give me a second to regroup. Now that the engine is out of the way, I think I'm gonna lower the truck down a little bit, and we're gonna start doing some measurements, and we're gonna start fabricating the front end of the frame. We're gonna try and make a 40-degree bend in one of our 1 3/4 pipes. And that is basically gonna come out of our frame rail, go up 40 degrees, and then it's gonna come up a specific height and then go back down 40 degrees so that we have another level frame rail on this side. If we have to do this, then we have to do it a second time on that side, make them perfectly identical, and then we're gonna kind of rotate them both inwards so that they come really close to the engine so that we have a lot of room for the articulation of our front axle. That's the theory anyhow. So, without further ado, we're gonna grab a pipe. We're gonna bend our first piece of pipe of this entire project.
How many times have you used a bender?
Never used a bender like this. I've used a Harbor Freight like press bender, which is basically where you have like some dies inside of a hydraulic press like that, and it just like presses in the middle of the pipe and like bends it this way, which is not nearly as good as this, where it draws it over the die. The other type of bender is usually just like kinks the pipe. So, or the tubing. A little bit different than this. Okay. Set my little gauge there to 0. And we're basically heading for 40 degrees. This is a little nerve-wracking. Okay, there's 40 degrees on the money. Now, can go test it with this piece. There's 12 inches. This is the problem with bending tubing, is that like I'm not a professional, obviously. I've never really done too much tubing bending. And so I don't know how to measure from this bend to where to start my next bend, or where to put my next bend in the bender, like so that it bends in the right spot. Because I might be like, oh, got this measurement here, I need it to bend in this spot, and I put it in the bender, and then it bends like 3 inches away from there and makes a completely different shape than what I need. So there is some trial and error here. Most people will take a bunch of pieces of scrap tubing and they'll put them in their bender and they'll bend a bunch of different angles, and then they'll mark kind of where it was in the bender when they made those angles so that they can hold that piece up here, and then they mark and they know right where they need to put it in the bender to get that next bend. So maybe that's what I should do, is cut a piece and like bend another 40-degree angle. Or actually, I'm gonna grab my angle finder and see what angle I need, because it'll probably be less than 40, because this tubing is actually going at an angle being sleeved inside the frame rail, and it's pressed against the bottom of the frame here. And that's actually gonna apply a little bit extra rigidity. If anything tries to force up on this, it's not just the welds on the face of the frame holding the front end of the frame together. It's gonna be braced inside the rectangle tubing on the frame. So hopefully it'll be stronger and not weaker. I've used my angle finder here to make sure that the bender is on the same level of plane as my first bend. That way I don't have like one bend that goes this way, and then when you go to bend the other one back, it's a little bit cockeyed, and then when you bend it, you've got two bends going different directions. So this right here should be a perfectly flat second bend. They should both be on the exact same plane, because they are both 0.2 or 0.3 degrees off. And here goes nothing. It's a little crooked, but it'll do. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. That frame rail is going to the sky. I need more bend on that one. Oh, it looks like I gave her too much.
It's pretty flat. Is that what you were going for? Is flat?
Yeah, but it's going down. Well, we're learning, and I'm learning that if I bend that first bend to make my upward trajectory of this frame rail, when I made the second bend, it needed to be like a little more drastic of a bend so that it came flat right here. But if I rotate this, that comes outwards now because it's not paralleling the previous angle. So I might have messed it up, which is fine. I can probably just cut these two bends off and use them as like example bends of 52 and 36 degrees, which are not really angles that you're always going to be replicating, but that's basically what it's going to take to do the frame fabrication on this thing. Is I'm just going to have to mess it up a handful of times, and I'm going to have to try again and start over until I get it right. But I think we're making progress. We're learning anyways. So I think I'm going to grab another piece of pipe and go ahead and bend, instead of a 36 and a 52, I'm going to try and do a 40 and a 40, make them perfectly parallel with each other, and then hopefully it'll work out. So I had two pieces that were cut pretty long. The first one is over there, we messed it up. And then I had two pieces that were the fall off of our 10-foot sticks from when we cut those pieces. This is about 15 inches shorter than that piece. And when I measured out to where my radiator and everything's gonna go, or where the end of that frame rail will terminate, it's, I need about 17 inches less than what that rail has on it. And this is 15 inches shorter. So this should be 2 inches longer than what I need. Hopefully it is, and I guess we'll see when we get to that point, but I'm gonna go ahead and throw this in the bender. I'm gonna try and replicate those 2 bends because this is going to be the frame rail for the driver's side.
We got our windows down, driving down the 405.
Okay.
Sing along to
That's really good.
That's pretty good for somebody who has no clue what is going on right now. I'm happy with that. Now we've got to get these 2 pieces of tubing stuck inside our rectangular tubing and then figure out our angle inward so that they can run up next to the engine. The problem is I don't want to get too close to my headers. I don't want to get too close to the motor mounts because I have to build little brackets that are going to come off of this tubing that are going to attach to the motor mounts. And I don't really know where any of that stuff is going to end up because I don't have the motor mounted because I'm building the thing that the motor mounts to. So this could be very interesting, but I think we can do it. I love doing things that I've never done before, and I love like making an attempt at doing things that are difficult. I even like making a mistake like this and then being able to fix it on like the 2nd or 3rd try. A lot of people might think that that's like a waste, but for me, that's really validating for me that like I can do this. I made those 2 bends exactly the same as each other, one after the other, after making a mistake on these bends. Now those 2 are gonna work. We're gonna be able to get those thrown in, tacked into the frame. And what do you know, I might be able to get like some motor mounts on this thing and maybe get the motor mounted in there so we can start building the rest of the frame, at least very soon. Not today, but very soon.
So make sure that you don't miss out, just be there. We're taking our shot.
So I've got a center line determined on my frame. I've measured off my frame rails and off the body in the back because the frame rails in the back are not necessarily straight. I've made a mark in the back and a mark in the front. I've put a laser level here so that I have some way to kind of like pull a tape off of my tubing and rotate it inwards so that I know that it's actually the same distance away from the center as the other one, so my motor's not like off center when I go to mount it. I just don't want them to like collide with the headers or have any issues there. And my headers are 26 inches. I do have one complication, and that's that a lot of people gave me crap about buying these cheap headers and said that's not something you want to cheap out on. You want to get some nice quality headers that the welds aren't going to crack and they're not going to be, having exhaust leaks and all those different problems. So I'm going to sell these, and I got some different headers that I'm going to throw on. So maybe before we actually get these welded on, I'm going to swap those headers out, make sure that measurement is similar or the same, so I don't build my frame rails and then swap the headers and have issues. So we're gonna grab some tools and hurry and switch these out.
So make sure that you don't miss out, just be there. Oh, just be there. We're taking our shot, bring what you got. We're going all the way to the top. We will hear the sound of 1 million people screaming our names when we're backstage.
Now we got our new headers put on. They're looking pretty good. They're Doug Thorley's. I don't know who that guy is, but maybe he makes good headers.
Well, they're bigger.
They're sticking out like, instead of 25, they're like at least 26. So I think we go 28 inches on our frame widths, which is easy, just 14 inches off of our center line in either direction. Make sure that our angles are the same. We can tack weld those puppies on, so let's try it. We got both of the pieces of tubing tacked inside of our frame rails, and it's looking pretty good. There's like this drastic bend up and in. It's gonna come in, the motor is gonna sit right here. The motor mounts are gonna attach on these points here. And then out here in the front, we'll end up cutting these pieces of tubing off and making a radiator support that's gonna set there, and then the intercooler for the supercharger will also go there. This is also gonna be the base for all of the connecting points that are going to connect the coilovers. There's going to be a bar across the top. There's going to be some bracing that goes out to the exo cage. There's a lot of tubing. There's a lot of things going on here, and I am all but prepared. I'm very excited to get it going and start fabbing up the frame. This is a really, really crucial point here. This is a really exciting part. All right, well, now I can actually cut this pipe to be the same length as the other side. It's definitely not straight, but doesn't need to be. So this here is the coper, basically cut edges into the pipe so that it fits directly into the next pipe. I can show you a little bit more what I mean. So basically this hole saw is the same size as that pipe, or it's the same size as the pipe that it's going to join up to. So this hole saw is going to cut a perfectly circular, perpendicular shape out of this pipe so that it's coped so that it fits onto the next pipe instead of being flat. It's a really cool machine. It's a really cool technique. All right, well, that was my first time using my bench grinder, and I don't know if it was a safety feature or what, but it like would just turn on and rev up and then turn off, and I had to like hold the button, but I held the button for a second and then it stayed on after like the 14th try. So got that thing going, cleaned up all the burrs off the edges and kind of cleaned up the edges with the sandpaper so that I can get a nice good weld on there, and I don't have to worry about the mill scale like causing impurities in the weld, even though these are not going to be forever welds. This is great practice. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this over there and we're going to test fit it. Wants to fit. Ooh.
Look at that.
So as you see, if I had a square piece of pipe, when they butt up, there would just be these giant gaps on the top and the bottom. And now that we've coped it, it fits on there perfectly. So you can get a nice tight weld in there. You don't have to worry about giant gaps or anything like that. A smart person would probably wait to put this support on the outside of the frame until after they got the motor in place. But we don't really have that option because we can't get the motor in there and like put it on motor mounts until we've got the frame like more sturdily supported. So I think now that that's in place, kind of hold those together, I think I can weld around these tubings to weld the square or the rectangular tubing to the circular tubing, and then we can actually start working on our gussets and our braces that are going to mount here. And I can probably fully weld those motor mounts now because we're not changing anything.
Those are body mounts.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Motor, body, whatever. The things that are holding the cab onto the frame, I can weld them on now.
Red guitar, purple haze, stick love and the ball was all he needed.
I think I am still going to drop the body or drop the frame off of the body and weld the top of those mounts later. And I'll probably do that once we have most of the frame fully constructed, and then when I drop it down, I'll hit all the welds that I couldn't hit because the body was in the way. And we'll finish doing our fish plate and our gussets on the back end of the frame and fully weld all of that. It's just like, this is really exciting, but it's really nerve-wracking because if I start making mistakes now, it's going to compound on itself and I'm going to end up with like a weird, like a broken bicycle wheel mess of a cage, and I don't want that. So I'm a little nervous, but I think I'm actually ready to fully weld these pieces of tubing into the rectangular tubing, and then we can start cutting some gussets and getting those welded on. That is the most awkward, ugly welds that no one will ever see. But trying to weld the tubing, the circular tubing inside the rectangular tubing, just trying to get some type of bead in there. Very difficult, but it's fully in there. I can hear this thing creaking and cracking while it's cooling down, so hopefully things kind of stay where they're supposed to. That's why we got this brace and we got that square brace right there. I'll let this cool, and then it should be good to go. Probably grind down some of these welds on the outside before we put our gussets and our plates on. We're making some progress today. We got all 4 body mounts completely welded on. Like I said earlier, we did make a lot of progress on the front end, which is really exciting, but this might be it for today. It might not look like much, and it might look like we just spent all day making these 3 pieces of tubing and welding them together. And that is all we did today, and it basically took all day. So we didn't get a lot done, but we got some really cool stuff done. And this is like, that's legit. That is the front end of the frame. There's gonna be a lot of other stuff to make it a little bit more structurally sound, but this is like the meat and potatoes. This is the bones that's gonna hold. The end pin is gonna be mounted on here. Our hoops are gonna be mounted on there that hold our coilovers, which is gonna attach the axle. All of the linkage is all gonna attach back on the rectangular part of the frame. So we're making progress, man. I'm a little bit overwhelmed, but I'm having a great time. So if you guys are having a great time watching these videos, make sure you let me know by giving a big thumbs up on today's video. Make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I will see you guys on the next one.